much good stuff before I died.
Even know what classifies as good in this game.
Well, I had all flows with a lot of inventory space. So for the beginning, that's like a really nice sort of. My feet are soaking wet. I wonder why it's raining.
You don't have what the fuck is stubborn in English? Footwear to deal with the water.
You mean shoes?
Yeah, shoes with a high plastic. Thingy.
I'm feeling weak. Why am I feeling weak? Hypothermia. What the fuck? Run, Forrest, run!
Make sure to get out of the rain.
I did, because I'm running.
Hej Siri. Kör dem.
I'm coming up on a town. Run quickly. Am I getting hypothermia while running?
Well, running helps with your temperature. No. I say realistically.
And of course there's a zombie right here. Oh, I found like a garden with different stuff.
I just found sexy denim shorts. That actually go under my skirt. So, it's kind of funky.
I guess the devs know what they're doing.
Why would you say that?
Oh fuck. I'm surrounded.
What zombies?
Yeah.
All the gay Christians.
I'm locked into a room. Can I? Oh, I can't run up. Run, Forrest!
temperature milk or cold?
Temperature milk.
With like the extra layer fat on top. You have to cut open. I heard stories about that from the old days. The milk would be delivered outside in the sun.
Dude, guess what I just found? And it'll be funny if I die.
Screwdriver.
Hiking backpack. It has so much room. It has so much room. It's crazy.
It's on tight.
But my health, my hypothermia is going up.
Going up or down, or worse or better?
It's getting worse.
All this traffic. No! Yes. Og så tar batteriet på kamera, så det koker ikke over. I got myself a new GoPro now. GoPro 13. And the bastards have changed how the battery from my old one and the new one is, so I can't use my old batteries.
Oh, damn.
So, and it's for two batteries, it's like 700 kroners. So I'm just gonna give the batteries, my old ones, to my brother, because he got my old GoPro 10.
There's another zombie somewhere here. Do they have nothing better to do? Close the door on your way in, zombie. Come on. Bad manners.
I found an intact Volkswagen,
What?
but it's missing doors. It says it's intact 100%, but it's missing everything.
Maybe they mean their chassis.
Yeah, I think so.
Like it works great. It has no doors.
Or engine. Or brakes. What does it have? Paint. Rust.
It's still raining? Yeah, I can't even make a fire because it's raining.
That's
I made
just
it to a town called Krakow.
that's just
Yeah,
like
I'm on the
in
northeast side of it.
Valheim. If you want to make rain and fire in the rain, you have to make a roof. But don't make the roofs too low, because then the smoke is gonna
Choke you.
yeah.
Where did it stop raining now?
It stopped here.
Oh, yeah. You're close to me if you can come find me.
Good morning, Tamara.
I'm on the northeast side of the town now.
Nej, vad fan? Stop doing that, you phone.
I need tinder. I need fire drill.
What is this? Yeah, we'll talk later when I get home on front of the PC.
Guys,
det. No, sorry. Oh crap, that's good night. Johnny. Yeah, I was on Discord with my friend Dennis from USA/Finland and my other friend from USA/Netherlands. They were playing a game called Scum. It's a really, I think, difficult survival game. You can get sick and a lot of stuff can happen. And you can meet zombies and everything as well, so. And other players. But luckily my server is not that populated, so. Yeah, I'm still using my GoPro microphone, and the reason is that you're probably hearing me better is because I'm not driving really fast. But yeah, I managed to lose my new microphone somewhere, so I just ordered a new one and I'm gonna not take it out of the car. So the new one is arriving to later today. I think that one I also ordered like a better version, like so I get 2 microphones and a receiver, so I can connect a normal microphone, I think. So I was planning to use the receiver with a normal microphone, so I can have. I'm not gonna take it out of the car. Well, I know it's inside the house somewhere, but I totally blacked out where I put it, so I guess the age is starting to show. It will probably appear when I open the new one. Maybe there are just trolls living here. No, not trolls, I mean oh, the Norwegian word is nisser, like the Santa little helpers, but in Norway it's usually at least some farms, if something go missing, you could say that there are like, oh, something has been, someone has borrowed this, because then, yeah, after maybe a week or 2 you find it and then, oh, they returned it. If you search on YouTube for a TV show called Jul I Månetoppen, which means Christmas at the moon top, basically, or something. There you can see like you have blue nisser and red nisser. The red ones live at different farms, and the blue ones live in like inside the cave. And they can only come out when it is like the blue hours or something. It's called Blåtimen here. Well, if that is the case, I'm gonna get 2 more tonight, so I hope not. It's really small. It's like the size of my thumbnail, so almost. So it's not impossible that it have gone a place it shouldn't. And some idiot was cleaning the school I was working at now with the high pressure washer and the lift, so he is basically working above my car, cleaning the house. So there are like red marks and concrete and bird droppings and everything on the car now. Some people are just retards, don't think about warning consequence.
Spar 9 minutter via E6.
Jeg kjører på E6, din dumme AI.
Baggins was grown up, being about 50 years old or so, and living in the beautiful hobbit home built by his father. One morning, when Bilbo Baggins was standing at his door after breakfast, smoking an enormous long wooden pipe, Gandalf came by. Gandalf. Tales and adventures sprouted up all over the place wherever he went, in the most extraordinary fashion. He had not been down that way under the hill for ages and ages.
I think he was from
the
the
hobbits
East
had
Blood
almost
country as
forgotten
well,
what he
so
looked like. All that the unsuspecting Bilbo
my
saw that
experience
morning
is some of them
was
are
an
really
old
good
man
workers,
with a staff.
but some are just do
He had a tall,
stuff
pointed
without
blue
thinking
hat,
at all.
a long grey cloak, a silver scarf over which his long white beard hung down below his waist, and immense black boots. "Good morning," said Bilbo, and he meant it. The sun was shining and the grass was very green. But Gandalf looked at him from under long, bushy eyebrows that stuck out further
What?
than the brim
Have
of
I
his shady
purchased
hat.
Chinese as well?
This audio program is presented by Audible.com.
Okay, so
Audible.
I have Chinese, Spanish and Japanese. And listening to stuff I have purchased on my iPhone, I guess in around 2008.
This audio program is presented by Audible.com. Audible. Audio that speaks to you wherever you are.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
What a lovely day, isn't it?
'Tis that.
Are you here on holiday?
Oh, I live here.
Oh, good for you. There's all sheep, aren't they? Yes, yes, I thought they were. Only, why are they up in the trees?
A fair question, and one that in recent weeks has been much on my mind. It's my considered opinion that they're nesting.
Nesting? Like birds?
Exactly. It's my belief that these sheep are labouring under the misapprehension that they're birds. Observe their behaviour. Take for a start the sheep's tendency to up about the field on their back legs. Now witness their attempts to fly from tree to tree. Notice they do not so much fly as plummet.
Yes, but why do they think they're birds?
Another fair question. One thing is for sure, a sheep is not a creature of the air. It has enormous difficulty in the comparatively simple act of perching. Trouble is, sheep are very dim. Once they get an idea in their heads, there's no shifting it.
But where did they get the idea?
From Harold. He's that most dangerous of creatures, a clever sheep. He's realised that a sheep's life consists of standing around for a few months and then being eaten. And that's a depressing prospect for an ambitious sheep. He's patently hit on the idea of escape.
Well, why don't you just remove Harold?
Because of the enormous commercial possibilities if he succeeds.
And what exactly are the commercial possibilities of ovine aviation?
Mesdames et messieurs, voici le mouton anglo-français. La région l'appelle et maintenant le chapelet comme ça. Maintenant, je vous présente le pauvre célèbre Jean-Brian Jatapati.
Merci mon petit chouchou, c'est vrai, la stripper extraordinaire. Maintenant, le grand mouton anglo-français avec le popelette dans le nez.
Sound
Et
French.
comme ça, et d'habitude, le naughty Brian Trapshaw comme ça, le test pilote.
And how do you get on with French people?
Very well, so did I. And me, yes, so did Mrs. A. I mean, be fair, Pascal. Please, Pascal. So poor, sir. Okay. Really, Descartes.
Well, what do you think of the German?
Rubbish, rubbish. Immanuel Kant. The ego posits itself, my foot. Needs to.
Will you swap René Descartes for, say, Hegel and Martin Heidegger?
No. I'll keep Descartes. Definitely.
Random.
This audio program is presented by Audible.com. Audible, audio that speaks to you wherever you are.
Jerry Seinfeld as well. What the hell?
This audio program is presented by Audible. This audio program is presented by Audible.com. Audible, audio that speaks to you wherever you are.
The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. Read by Rob Inglis. Chapter 1. An Unexpected Party. In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. Not a nasty, dirty, wet hole, filled with the ends of worms and an oozy smell, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole with nothing in it to sit down on or to eat. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort. It had a perfectly round door like a porthole, painted green, with a shiny yellow brass knob in the exact middle. The door opened onto a tube-shaped hall like a tunnel, a very comfortable tunnel without smoke, with panelled walls and floors tiled and carpeted, provided with polished chairs and lots of pegs for hats and coats. The hobbit was fond of visitors. The tunnel wound on and on, going fairly but not quite straight into the side of the hill, as all the people for many miles round called it, and many little round doors opened out of it, first on one side and then on another. No going upstairs for the hobbit. Bedrooms, bathrooms, cellars, pantries, lots of these. Wardrobes, he had whole rooms devoted to clothes. Kitchens, dining rooms, all were on the same floor, and indeed on the same passage. The best rooms were all on the left-hand side going in, for these were the only ones to have windows, deep-set round windows looking over his garden and meadows beyond, sloping down to the river. This hobbit was a very well-to-do hobbit, and his name was Baggins. The Bagginses had lived in the neighbourhood of the hill for time out of mind, and people considered them very respectable, not only because most of them were very rich, but also because they never had any adventures or did anything unexpected. You could tell what a Baggins would say on any question without the bother of asking him. This is a story of how a Baggins had an adventure and found himself doing and saying things altogether unexpected. He may have lost the neighbours' respect, but he gained, well, you will see whether he gained anything in the end. The mother of our particular hobbit. What is a hobbit? I suppose hobbits need some description nowadays, since they've become rare and shy of the big people, as they call us. They are, or were, a little people, about half our height, and smaller than the bearded dwarves. Hobbits have no beards. There is little or no magic about them, except the ordinary, everyday sort which helps them to disappear quietly and quickly when large, stupid folk like you and me come blundering along, making a noise like elephants which they can hear a mile off. They are inclined to be fat in the stomach. They dress in bright colours, chiefly green and yellow, wear no shoes, because their feet grow natural leathery soles and thick, warm brown hair like the stuff on their heads, which is curly, have long, clever brown fingers, good-natured faces, and laugh deep, fruity laughs, especially after dinner, which they have twice a day when they can get it. Now you know enough to go on with. As I was saying, the mother of this hobbit, of Bilbo Baggins, that is, was the fabulous Belladonna Took, one of the 3 remarkable daughters of the old Took, head of the hobbits who lived across the water, the small river that ran at the foot of the hill. It was often said, in other families, that long ago one of the Took ancestors must have taken a fairy wife. That was, of course, absurd, but certainly there was still something not entirely hobbit-like about them, and once in a while members of the Took clan would go and have adventures. They discreetly disappeared, and the family hushed it up, but the fact remained that the Tooks were not as respectable as the Bagginses, though they were undoubtedly richer. Not that Belladonna Took ever had any adventures after she became Mrs. Bungo Baggins. Bungo, that was Bilbo's father, built the most luxurious hobbit hole for her, and partly with her money, that was to be found either under the hill, or over the hill, or across the water, and there they remained to the end of their days. Still, it is probable that Bilbo, her only son, although he looked and behaved exactly like a second edition of his solid and comfortable father, got something a bit queer in his make-up from the Took side, something that only waited for a chance to come out. The chance never arrived until Bilbo Baggins was grown up, being about 50 years old or so, and living in the beautiful hobbit hole built by his father, which I have just described for you, until he had in fact apparently settled down immovably. By some curious chance, one morning long ago in the quiet of the world, when there was less noise and more green, and the hobbits were still numerous and prosperous, and Bilbo Baggins was standing at his door after breakfast, smoking an enormous long wooden pipe that reached nearly down to his woolly toes, neatly brushed, Gandalf came by. Gandalf. If you had heard only a quarter of what I have heard about him, and I have only heard very little of all there is to hear, you would be prepared for any sort of remarkable tale. Tales and adventures sprouted up all over the place wherever he went, in the most extraordinary fashion. He had not been down that way under the hill for ages and ages, not since his friend the old Took died, in fact, and the hobbits had almost forgotten what he looked like. He had been away over the hill and across the water on business of his own, since they were all small hobbit boys and hobbit girls. All that the unsuspecting Bilbo saw that morning was an old man with a staff. He had a tall, pointed blue hat, a long grey cloak, a silver scarf over which a white beard hung down below his waist, and immense black boots. "Good morning," said Bilbo, and he meant it. The sun was shining, and the grass was very green. But Gandalf looked at him from under long, bushy eyebrows that stuck out further than the brim of his shady hat. "What do you mean?" he said. "Do you wish me a good morning? Or mean that it is a good morning whether I want it or not? Or that you feel good this morning? Or that it is a morning to be good on?" "All of them at once," said Bilbo, "and a very fine morning for a pipe of tobacco out of doors into the bargain. If you have a pipe about you, sit down and have a fill of mine. There's no hurry. We have all the day before us." Then Bilbo sat down on a seat by his door, crossed his legs, and blew out a beautiful grey ring of smoke that sailed up into the air without breaking and floated away over the hill. "Very pretty," said Gandalf, "but I have no time to blow smoke rings this morning. I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure that I'm arranging, and it's very difficult to find anyone." "I think so. In these parts, we're plain, quiet folk and have no use for adventures. Nasty, disturbing, uncomfortable things make you late for dinner. I can't think what anybody sees of them," said our Mr. Baggins, and stuck one thumb behind his braces and blew out another, even bigger smoke ring. Then he took out his morning letters and began to read, pretending to take no more notice of the old man. He had decided that he was not quite his sort and wanted him to go away. But the old man did not move. He stood leaning on his stick and gazing at the hobbit without saying anything, till Bilbo got quite uncomfortable and even a little cross. "Good morning," he said at last. "We don't want any adventures here, thank you. You might try over the hill or across the water." By this he meant that the conversation was at an end. "What a lot of things you do use 'good morning' for," said Gandalf. "Now you mean you want to get rid of me, and that it won't be good till I move off." Not at all, my dear sir. Let me see, I don't think I know your name." Yes, my dear sir, and I do know your name, Mr. Bilbo Baggins. And you do know my name, though you don't remember that I belong to it. I am Gandalf, and Gandalf means me. To think that I should have lived to be good-morninged by Belladonna Tookson as if I was selling buttons at the door. Gandalf, good gracious me, not the wandering wizard that gave old Took a pair of magic diamond studs that fastened themselves and never came undone till ordered? Not the fellow who used to tell such wonderful tales at parties about dragons and goblins and giants and the rescue of princesses and the unexpected luck of widows' sons? Not the man that used to make such particularly excellent fireworks? I remember those old Summer's Eve, splendid. They used to go up like great lilies and snapdragons and laburnum and hang in the twilight all evening. You will notice already that Mr. Baggins was not quite so prosy as he liked to believe. Also that he was very fond of flowers. Lads and lasses going off into the blue for mad adventures. Anything from climbing trees to visiting elves, or sailing in ships, sailing to other shores. Bless me, life used to be quite into... I mean, you used to upset things badly in these parts once upon a time. I beg your pardon, but I had no idea you were still in business. "Well," said the wizard, "all the same, I am pleased to find you remember something about me. You seem to remember my fireworks kindly, at any rate, and that is not without hope. Indeed, for your old grandfather Took's sake, and for the sake of poor Belladonna, I will give you what you asked for." "I beg your pardon? I haven't asked you for anything." "Yes, you have. Twice now. My pardon. I give it you. In fact, I will go so far as to send you on this adventure. Very amusing for me. Very good for you. And profitable too, very likely, if you ever get over it. Sorry, I don't want any adventures, thank you. Not today. Good morning, but please come to tea. Anytime you like. Why not tomorrow? Come tomorrow. Goodbye. With that, the hobbit turned and shut it as quickly as he dared, not to seem rude. Wizards, after all, are wizards. What on earth did I ask him to tea for? He said to himself as he went to the pantry. He had only just had breakfast, but he thought a cake or two and a drink of something would do him good after his fright. Gandalf, in the meantime, was still standing outside the door and laughing long but quietly. After a while he stepped up and with the spike of his staff scratched a queer sign on the hobbit's beautiful green front door. Then he strode away, just about the time when Bilbo was finishing his second cake and beginning to think that he had escaped adventures very well. The next day he had almost forgotten about Gandalf. He didn't remember things very well, unless he put them down on his engagement tablet, like this. Gandalf, tea, Wednesday. Yesterday he'd been too flustered to do anything of the kind. Just before tea time there came a tremendous ring on the front doorbell, and then he remembered. He rushed and put on the kettle, and put out another cup and saucer, and an extra cake or two, and ran to the door. "I am so sorry to keep you waiting," he was going to say, when he saw that it was not Gandalf at all. It was a dwarf, with a blue beard tucked into a golden belt, and very bright eyes under his dark green hood. As soon as the door was opened, he pushed inside, just as if he'd been expected. He hung his hooded cloak on the nearest peg, and "Dwalin at your service," he said with a low bow. "Is it yours?" said the hobbit, too surprised to ask any questions for the moment. When the silence that followed had become uncomfortable, he added, "I am just about to take tea. Pray come and have some with me." A little stiff, perhaps, but he meant it kindly. And what would you do if an uninvited dwarf came and hung his things up in your hall without a word of explanation? They had not been at table long. In fact, they had hardly reached the third cake when there came another, even louder ring at the bell. "Excuse me," said the hobbit, and off he went to the door. "So you have got here at last," was what he was going to say to Gandalf this time. But it was not Gandalf. Instead, there was a very old-looking dwarf on the step with a white beard and a scarlet hood, and he too hopped inside as soon as the door was open, just as if he had been invited. "I see they've begun to arrive already," he said when he caught sight of Dwalin's green hood hanging up. He hung his red one next to it, and "Dwalin at your service," he said with his hand on his breast. "Thank you," said Bilbo with a gasp. It was not the correct thing to say, but "they have begun to arrive" had flustered him badly. He liked visitors, but he liked to know them before they arrived, and he preferred to ask them himself. He had a horrible thought that the cakes might run short, and then he, as the host, he knew his duty and stuck to it however painful. He might have to go without. "Come along in and have some tea," he managed to say after taking a deep breath. "It would suit me better, if it's all the same to you, my good sir," said Balin with the white beard. "But I don't mind some cake, seed cake if you have any." "Lots," Bilbo found himself answering, to his own surprise. and he found himself scuttling off, too, to the cellar to fill a pint beer mug, and to the pantry to fetch 2 beautiful round seed cakes which he had baked that afternoon for his after-supper morsel. When he got back, Balin and Dwalin were talking at the table like old friends. As a matter of fact, they were brothers. Bilbo plumped down the beer and the cake in front of them, when loud came a ring at the bell again, and then another ring. Gandalf for certain this time, he thought as he puffed along the passage. But it was not. It was 2 more dwarves, both with blue hoods, silver belts, and yellow beards, and each one of them carried a bag of tools and a spade. In they hopped as soon as the door began to open. Bilbo was hardly surprised at all. "What can I do for you, my dwarves?" he said.
"Keely at your service,"
said the one. "And Feely," added the other, and they both swept off their blue hoods and bowed. "At yours and your families," replied Bilbo, remembering his manners this time.
"Dwalin and Balin here already, I see,"
said Keely.
"Let's join the throng."
"I don't like the sound of that. I really must sit down for a minute and have a drink." He had only just had a sip in the corner while the 4 dwarves sat around the table and talked about mines and gold and troubles with the goblins and the depredations of dragons and lots of other things which he did not understand and did not want to, for they sounded much too adventurous, when ding-dong-a-ling-dang, his bell rang again, as if some naughty little hobbit boy was trying to pull the handle off. "Someone at the door," he said, blinking.
"Some 4, I should say, by the sound,"
said Feely.
"Besides, we saw them coming along behind us in the distance."
The poor little hobbit sat down in the hall and put his head in his hands and wondered what had happened and what was going to happen and whether they would all stay to supper. Then the bell rang again, louder than ever, and he had to run to the door. It was not 4 after all. It was 5. Another dwarf had come along while he was wandering in the hall. He had hardly turned the knob before they were all inside, bowing and saying, "At your service," one after another. Dori, Nori, Ori, Oin, and Gloin were their names, and very soon 2 purple hoods, a grey hood, a brown hood, and a white hood were hanging on the pegs, and off they marched with their broad hands stuck in their gold and silver. Already it had almost become a throng. Some called for ale, and some for porter, and one for coffee, and all of them for cakes, so the hobbit was kept very busy for a while. A big jug of coffee had just been set in the hearth. The seed cakes were gone, and the dwarves were starting on a round of buttered scones, when there came a loud knock. Not a ring, but a hard rat-tat on the hobbit's beautiful green door. Somebody was banging with a stick. Bilbo rushed along the passage, very angry, and altogether bewildered and bewothered. This was the most awkward Wednesday he ever remembered. He pulled open the door with a jerk, and they all fell in, one on top of the other. More dwarves, 4 more, and there was Gandalf behind, leaning on his staff and laughing. He had made quite a dent on the beautiful door. He had also, by the way, knocked out the secret mark that he had put there the morning before.
"Carefully, carefully," he said. "It is not like you, Bilbo, to keep friends waiting on the mat and then open the door like a popgun. Let me introduce Bifur, Bofur, Bomber, and especially Thorin." "At your service," said Bifur, Bofur, and Bomber standing in a row. Then they hung up 2 yellow hoods and a pale green one, and also a sky blue one with a long silver tassel. This last belonged to Thorin,
an enormously important dwarf. In fact, no other than the great Thorin Oakenshield himself, who was not at all pleased at falling flat on Bilbo's mat with Bifur, Bofur, and Bombur on top of him. For one thing, Bombur was immensely fat and heavy. Thorin indeed was very haughty, and said nothing about service. But poor Mr. Baggins said he was sorry so many times that at last he grunted,
"Pray don't mention it,"
and stopped frowning.
"Now we are all here,"
said Gandalf, looking at the row of 13 hoods, the best detachable party hoods, and his own hat hanging on the pegs.
"Quite a merry gathering. I hope there's something left for the latecomers to eat and drink. What's that? Tea? No, thank you. A little red wine, I think, for me. And for me,"
said Thorin.
"And raspberry jam and apple tart,"
said Bifur.
"And mince pies and cheese,"
said Bofur.
"And pork pie and salad,"
said Bombur.
"And more cakes, and ale, and coffee, if you don't mind,"
called the other dwarves through the door.
"Put on a few eggs, there's a good fellow,"
Gandalf called after him, as the hobbit stumped off to the pantries.
"And just bring out the cold chicken and pickles."
"Seems to know as much about the inside of my larders as I do myself," thought Mr. Baggins, who was feeling positively flummoxed, and was beginning to wonder whether a most wretched adventure had not come right into his house. By the time he'd got all the bottles and dishes and knives and forks and glasses and plates and spoons and things piled up on big trays, he was getting very hot and red in the face and annoyed. "Confiscated, but bother these dwarves," he said aloud. "Why don't they come and lend a hand?" Lo and behold, there stood Balin and Dwalin at the door of the kitchen, and Fili and Kili behind them, and before he could say knife, they had whisked the trays and a couple of small tables into the parlour and set out everything afresh. Gandalf sat at the head of the party with the 13 dwarves all round, and Bilbo sat on a stool at the fireside, nibbling at a biscuit. His appetite was quite taken away, and trying to look as if this was all perfectly ordinary and not in the least an adventure. The dwarves ate and ate, and talked, and time got on. At last they pushed their chairs back, and Bilbo made a move to collect the plates and glasses. "I suppose you will all stay to supper," he said in his politest, unpressing tones.
"Of course,"
said Thorin.
"And after. We shan't get through the business too late, and we must have some music first. Now to clear up."
Thereupon the 12 dwarves, not Thorin, he was too important, and stayed talking to Gandalf, jumped to their feet and made tall piles of all the things. Off they went, not waiting for trays, balancing columns of plates, each with a bottle on the top, with one hand, while the hobbit ran after them, almost squeaking with fright. "Please be careful, and please don't trouble, I can manage." But the dwarves only started to sing.
"Chip the glasses and crack the plates, blunt the knives and bend the forks. That's what Bilbo Baggins hates. Smash the bottles and burn the corks. Cut the cloth and tread on the fat. Pour the milk on the pantry floor. Leave the bones on the bedroom mat. Splash the wine on every door. Dump the crocks in a boiling bowl. Pound them up with a thumping pole. And when you're finished, if any are whole, send them down the hall to roll. That's what Bilbo Baggins hates. So carefully, carefully with the plates." And of course they did none of these dreadful things, and everything was cleaned up and put away safe as quick as lightning, while the hobbit was turning round and round in the middle of the kitchen, trying to see what they were doing.
Then they went back and found Thorin with his feet on the fender smoking a pipe. He was blowing the most enormous smoke rings, and wherever he told one to go, it went, up the chimney, or behind the clock on the mantelpiece, or under the table, or round and round the ceiling. But wherever it went, it was not quick enough to escape Gandalf. Pop! He sent a smaller smoke ring from his short clay pipe straight through each one of Thorin's. Then Gandalf's smoke ring would go green and come back to hover over the wizard's head. He had quite a cloud of them about him already, and in the dim light it made him look strange and sorcerous. Bilbo stood still and watched. He loved smoke rings, and then he blushed to think how proud he had been yesterday morning of the smoke rings he had sent up the wind over the hill.
"Now for some music," said Thorin. "Bring out the instruments."
Keely and Feely rushed for their bags and brought back little fiddles. Dori, Nori, and Ori brought out flutes from somewhere inside their coats. Bomber produced a drum from the hall. Bifur and Bofa went out too, and came back with clarinets that they had left among the walking sticks. Dwalin and Balin said,
"Excuse me, I left mine in the porch." "Just bring mine in with you,"
said Thorin. They came back with vials as big as themselves, and with Thorin's harp wrapped up in a green cloth. It was a beautiful golden harp, and when Thorin struck it, the music began all at once, so sudden and sweet that Bilbo forgot everything else, and was swept away into dark lands under strange moons, far over the water and very far from his hobbit hole under the hill. The dark came into the room from the little window that opened in the side of the hill. The firelight flickered. It was April, and still they played on, while the shadow of Gandalf's beard wagged against the wall. The dark filled all the room, and the fire died down, and the shadows were lost, and still they played on. And suddenly first one and then another began to sing as they played, deep-throated singing of the dwarves in the deep places of their ancient homes. And this is like a fragment of their song.
"Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day, to seek the pale enchanted gold. The dwarves of yore made mighty spells, while hammers fell like ringing bells, in places deep where dark things sleep, in hollow halls beneath the fells. For ancient king and elvish lord, their many a gleaming golden hoard, they shaped and wrought, and light they caught, to hide in gems on hilt of sword. On silver necklaces they strung the flowering stars, on crowns they hung the dragon far, in twisted wire they meshed the light of moon and sun. Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day, to claim our long-forgotten gold. Goblets they carved there for themselves, and harps of gold, where no man delves, there lay they long, and many a song was sung unheard by men or elves. The pines were roaring on the height, the winds were moaning in the night, the fire was red, its flaming spread, the trees like torches blazed with light. The bells were ringing in the dale, and men looked up with faces pale. The dragons are more fierce than fire, laid low their towers and houses frail. The mountains smoked beneath the moon, the dwarves they heard the tramp of doom. They fled their hall to dying fall, beneath his feet, beneath the moon. Far over the misty mountains grim, to dungeons deep and caverns dim, we must away ere break of day, to win our harps and gold from him.
As they sang, the hobbit felt the love of beautiful things made by hands and by cunning and by magic moving through him, a fierce and jealous love, the desire of the hearts of dwarves. Then something Tookish woke up inside him, and he wished to go and see the great mountains, and hear the pine trees and the waterfalls, and explore the caves, and wear a sword instead of a walking stick. He looked out of the window. The stars were out in a dark sky above the trees. He thought of the jewels of the dwarves shining in dark caverns. Suddenly, in the wood beyond the water, a flame leapt up. Probably somebody lighting a wood fire, and he thought of plundering dragons settling on his quiet hill and kindling it all to flames. He shuddered, and very quickly he was plain Mr. Baggins of Bag End, Underhill again. He got up trembling. He had less than half a mind to fetch the lamp, and more than half a mind to pretend to, and go and hide behind the beer barrels in the cellar, and not come out again until all the dwarves had gone away. Suddenly he found that the music and the singing had stopped, and they were all looking at him with eyes shining in the dark.
"Where are you going?" said Thorin, in a tone that seemed to show that he guessed both halves of the hobbit's mind.
What about a little light? Said Bilbo apologetically.
"We like the dark,"
said the dwarves.
"Dark for dark business. There are many hours before dawn."
"Of course," said Bilbo, and sat down in a hurry. He missed the stool and sat in the fender, knocking over the poker and shovel with a crash.
"Hush,"
said Gandalf.
"Let Thorin speak."
And this is how Thorin began.
"Gandalf, dwarves, and Mr. Baggins, we are met together in the house of our friend and fellow conspirator, this most excellent and audacious hobbit. May the hair on his toes never fall out. All praise to his wine and ale."
He paused for breath and for a polite remark from the hobbit, but the compliments were quite lost on poor Bilbo Baggins, who was wagging his mouth in protest at being called audacious, and worst of all, fellow conspirator, though no noise came out. He was so flummoxed. So Thorin went on.
"We are met to discuss our plans, our ways, means, policies, and devices. We shall soon, before the break of day, start on our long journey, a journey from which some of us, or perhaps all of us, except our friend and counselor, the ingenious wizard Gandalf, may never return. It is a solemn moment. Our object is, I take it, well known to us all. To the estimable Mr. Baggins, and perhaps to one or two of the younger dwarves, I think I should be right in naming Keely and Fila, for instance. The exact situation at the moment may require a little brief explanation."
This was Thorin's style. He was an important dwarf. If he had been allowed, he would probably have gone on like this until he was out of breath, without telling anyone there anything that was not known already. But he was rudely interrupted. Poor Bilbo couldn't bear it any longer. May never return, he began to feel a shriek coming up inside, and very soon it burst out like the whistle of an engine coming out of a tunnel. All the dwarves sprang up, knocking over the table. Gandalf struck a blue light on the end of his magic staff, and in its firework glare the poor little hobbit could be seen kneeling on the hearthrug, shaking like a jelly that was melting. Then he fell flat on the floor and kept on calling out, "Struck by lightning! Struck by lightning!" over and over again, and that was all they could get out of him for a long time. So they took him and laid him out of the way on the drawing room sofa with a drink at his elbow, and they went back to their dark business.
Excitable little fellow,
said
Yeah, see you
Gandalf
later,
as they sat
Tamara.
down again.
Gets funny queer fits, but he's one of the best, as fierce as a dragon in a pinch.
If you have ever seen a dragon in a pinch, you will realize that this was only poetical exaggeration applied to any hobbit, even to old Took's great-grand-uncle Bullroarer, who was so huge, for a hobbit, that he could ride a horse. He charged the ranks of the goblins of Mount Graham in the Battle of the Greenfields, and knocked their king Golfimble's head clean off with a wooden club. It sailed 100 yards through the air and went down a rabbit hole, and in this way the battle was won, and the game of golf invented at the same moment. In the meanwhile, however, Bullroarer's gentler descendant was reviving in the drawing room. After a while and a drink, he crept nervously to the door of the parlour. This is what he heard. Gloin speaking.
Humph.
Or some snort more or less like that.
Will he do?
Do you think?
It is all very well for Gandalf to talk about this hobbit being fierce, but one shriek like that in a moment of excitement would be enough to wake the dragon and all his relatives and kill a lot of us. I think it sounded more like fright than excitement. In fact, if it had not been for the sign on the door, I should have been sure we'd come to the wrong house. As soon as I clapped eyes on the little fellow bobbing and puffing on the mat, I had my doubts. He looks more like a grocer than a burglar.
Then Mr. Baggins turned the handle and went in. The Took side had won. He suddenly felt he would go without bed and breakfast to be thought fierce. As for little fellow bobbing on the mat, it almost made him really fierce. Many a time afterwards the Baggins part regretted what he did now, and he said to himself, "Bilbo, you were a fool. You walked right in and put your foot in it."
Pardon me, he said, if I've overheard words that you are saying. I don't pretend to understand what you're talking about, or your reference to burglars, but I think I'm right in believing,
this is what he called being on his dignity,
that you think I'm no good. I will show you. I have no signs on my door. It was painted a week ago, and I'm quite sure you've come to the wrong house. As soon as I saw your funny faces on the doorstep, I had my doubts. But treat it as the right house. Tell me what you want done, and I'll try it. If I have to walk from here to the east of East and fight the wild wereworms in the last desert. I had a great-great-great-granduncle once, Bullroarer Took, and...
Yes, but that was long ago, said Gloin. I was talking about you, and I assure you there is a mark on this door, the usual one in the trade, or used to be. Burglar wants a good job and plenty of excitement and reasonable reward. That's how it's usually read. You can say expert treasure hunter instead of burglar if you like. Some will do. It's all the same to us. Gandalf told us that there was a man of the sort in these parts looking for a job at once, and that he'd arranged for a meeting here this Wednesday tea time.
Of course there's a mark, said Gandalf. I put it there myself, for very good reasons. You asked me to find the 14th man for your expedition, and I chose Mr. Baggins. Just let anyone say I chose the wrong man or the wrong house, and you can stop at 13 and have all the bad luck you like, or go back to digging coal.
He scowled so angrily at Gloin that the dwarf huddled back in his chair, and when Bilbo tried to open his mouth to ask a question, he turned and frowned at him and stuck out his bushy eyebrows, till Bilbo shut his mouth tight with a snap.
That's right, said Gandalf. Let's have no more argument. I have chosen Mr. Baggins, and that ought to be enough for all of you. If I say he is a burglar he is, or will be when the time comes. There's a lot more in him than you guess, and a deal more than he has any idea of himself. You may possibly all live to thank me yet. Now, Bilbo, my boy, fetch the lamp, and let's have a little light on this.
On the table, in the light of a big lamp, with a red shade, he spread a piece of parchment rather like a map.
This was made by Thrall, your grandfather, Thorin,
he said in answer to the dwarves' excited questions.
It is a plan of the mountain. I don't see that this will help us much,
said Thorin, disappointedly after a glance.
I remember the mountain well enough and the lands about it, and I know where Mirkwood is, and the withered heath where the great dragons bred.
There's a dragon marked in red on the mountain, said Balin. But it will be easy enough to find him without that, if ever we arrive there.
There is one point that you haven't noticed,
said the wizard,
and that is the secret entrance. You see that rune on the west side, and the hand pointing to it from the other runes? That marks a hidden passage to the lower halls. It may have been secret once,
said Thorin,
but how do we know that it is secret any longer? Old Smaug has lived there long enough now to find out anything there is to know about those caves. He may, but he can't have used it for years and years. Why? Because it is too small. 5 feet high the door, and 3 may walk abreast, say the runes. But Smaug could not creep into a hole that size, not even when he was a young dragon, certainly not after devouring so many of the dwarves and men of Dale.
It seems a great big hole to me, squeaked Bilbo, who had no experience of dragons and only of hobbit holes. He was getting excited and interested again, so that he forgot to keep his mouth shut. He loved maps, and in his hall there hung a large one of the country round, with all his favourite walks marked on it in red ink. How could such a large door be kept secret from everybody outside, apart from the dragon? He asked. He was only a little hobbit, you must remember.
In lots of ways,
said Gandalf.
But in what way this one has been hidden, we don't know without going to see. From what it says on the map, I should guess there's a closed door which has been made to look exactly like the side of the mountain. That is the usual dwarves' method. I think that is right, isn't it? Quite right,
said Thorin.
Also, went on Gandalf, I forgot to mention that with the map went a key, a small and curious key. Here it is,
he said, and handed to Thorin a key with a long barrel and intricate wards made of silver.
Keep it safe. Indeed I will,
said Thorin, and he fastened it upon a fine chain that hung about his neck and under his jacket.
Now things begin to look more hopeful. This news alters them much for the better. So far, we've had no clear idea what to do. We thought of going east, as quiet and careful as we could, as far as the Long Lake. After that, the trouble would begin.
A long time before that, if I know anything about the roads east, interrupted Gandalf.
We might go from there up along the river running,
went on Thorin, taking no notice.
And so to the ruins of Dale, the old town in the valley there, under the shadow of the mountain. But we none of us liked the idea of the front gate. The river runs right out of it through the great cliff at the south of the mountain, and out of it comes the dragon too, far too often, unless it's changed.
That would be no good, said the wizard.
Not without a mighty warrior, even a hero. I tried to find one, but warriors are busy fighting one another in distant lands, and in this neighborhood heroes are scarce, or simply not to be found. Swords in these parts are mostly blunt, and axes are used for trees, and shields
some dish covers, and dragons are comfortably far off, and therefore legendary. And that is why I settled on burglary, especially when I remembered the existence of a side door. And here is our little Bilbo Baggins, the burglar, the chosen and selected burglar. So now let's get on and make some plans. Very well then, said Thorin. Supposing the burglar expert gives us some ideas or suggestions. He turned with mock politeness to Bilbo. First, I should like to know a bit more about things, said he, feeling all confused and a bit shaky inside, but so far still tookishly determined to go on with things. I mean about the gold and the dragon and all that, and how it got there and who it belongs to and so on and further. Bless me, said Thorin. Haven't you got a map? And didn't you hear our song? And haven't we been talking about all this for hours? All the same, I should like it all plain and clear, said he obstinately, putting on his business manner, usually reserved for people who tried to borrow money off him, and doing his best to appear wise and prudent and professional and live up to Gandalf's recommendation. Also, I should like to know about risks, out-of-pocket expenses, time required and remuneration and so forth, by which he meant, what am I going to get out of it, and am I going to come back alive? Oh, very well, said Thorin. Long ago in my grandfather Thrall's time, our family was driven out of the far north and came back with all their wealth and their tools to this mountain on the map. It had been discovered by my far ancestor, Thrain the Old, but now they mined, they tunneled, they made huge halls and beetle workshops, and in addition, I believe they found a good deal of gold and a great many jewels too. Anyway, they grew immensely rich and famous, and my grandfather was king under the mountain again, and treated with great reverence by the mortal men who lived to the south, and were gradually spreading up the running river as far as the valley overshadowed by the mountain. They built the many-town Dale there in those days. Kings used the same and all evenings still for most rich there. Fathers would beg us to take their sons as apprentices and pay us handsomely, especially in food supplies, which we never bothered to grow or fight for ourselves. Altogether, those were good days for us, and the poorest of us had money to spend and to lend, and leisure to make beautiful things just for the fun of it, not to speak of the most marvelous and magical toys, the like of which is not to be found in the world nowadays. So my grandfather's halls became full of armor and jewels and carvings and cups, and the toy market of Dale was the wonder of the north. Undoubtedly, that was what brought the dragon. Dragons steal gold and jewels, you know, from men and elves and dwarves, wherever they can find them, and they guard their plunder as long as they live, which is practically forever unless they are killed, and never enjoy a brass ring of it. Indeed, they hardly know a good bit of work from a bad, though they usually have a good notion of the current market value, and they can't make a thing for themselves, not even mend a little scale of their armor. There were lots of dragons in the north in those days. Gold was probably getting scarce up there, with the dwarves flying south, getting killed, and all the general waste and destruction the dragons make going from bad to worse. There was a most specially greedy, strong, and wicked worm called Smaug. One day he flew up into the air and came south. The first we heard of it was a noise like a hurricane coming from the north, and the pine trees on the mountain creaking and cracking in the wind. Some of the dwarves who happened to be outside, I was one luckily,
A fine, adventurous lad in those days, always wandering about, and it saved my life that day. Well, from a good way off we saw the dragon settle on our mountain in a spout of flame. Then he came down the slopes, and when he reached the woods, they all went up in fire. By that time all the bells were ringing in Dale, and the warriors were arming. The dwarves rushed out of their great gate, but there was the dragon waiting for them. None escaped that way. The river rushed up in steam, and a fog fell on Dale, and in the fog the dragon came on them and destroyed most of the warriors. The usual unhappy story, it was only too common in those days. Then he went back and crept in through the front gate and routed out all the halls and lanes and tunnels, alleys, cellars, mansions and passages. After that there were no dwarves left alive inside, and he took all their wealth for himself. Probably, but that is the dragon's way. He has piled it all up in a great heap far inside and sleeps on it for a bed. Later he used to crawl out of the great gate and come by night to Dale and carry away people, especially maidens, to eat, until Dale was ruined and all the people dead or gone. What goes on there now I don't know for certain, but I don't suppose anyone lives nearer to the mountain than the far edge of the Long Lake nowadays. The few of us that were well outside sat and wept in hiding and cursed Smaug. And there we were, unexpectedly joined by my father and my grandfather with singed beards. They looked very grim, but they said very little. When I asked how they had got away, they told me to hold my tongue and said that one day in the proper time I should know. After that we went away. We have had to earn our livings as best we could up and down the land, often enough sinking as low as blacksmith work or even coal mining. But we have never forgotten our stolen treasure, and even now, when I will allow we have a good bit laid by and are not so badly off, here Thorin stroked the gold chain round his neck. We still mean to get it back and to bring our curses home to Smaug, if we can. I have often wondered about my father's and my grandfather's escape. I see now they must have had a private side door, which only they knew about. But apparently they made a map, and I should like to know how Gandalf got hold of it, and why it did not come down to me, the rightful heir. I did not get hold of it. I was given it, said the wizard. Your grandfather Thror was killed, you remember, in the mines of Moria by Azog the Goblin. Curse his name, yes, said Thorin. And Thrain, your father, went away on the 21st of April, 100 years ago last Thursday, but has never been seen by you since. True, said Thorin. Well, your father gave me this to give to you. And if I have chosen my own time and way of handing it over, you can hardly blame me, considering the trouble I had to find you. Your father could not remember his own name when he gave me the paper, and he never told me yours. So on the whole, I think I ought to be praised and thanked. Here it is, said he, handing the map to Thorin. I don't understand, said Thorin, and Bilbo felt he would have liked to say the same. The explanation did not seem to explain. Your grandfather, said the wizard slowly and grimly, gave the map to his son for safety before he went to the mines of Moria. Your father went away to try his luck with a map after your grandfather was killed. Had lots of adventures of a most unpleasant sort he had, but he never got near the mountain. How he got there I don't know, but I found him a prisoner in the dungeons of the Necromancer. Whatever were you doing there? Asked Thorin with a shudder, and all the dwarves shivered. Never you mind. I was finding things out, as usual, and a nasty, dangerous business it was. Even I, Gandalf, only just escaped. I tried to save your father, but it was too late. He was witless and wandering, and had forgotten almost everything except the map and the key. We have long ago paid the goblins of Moria, said Thorin. We must give a thought to the necromancer. Don't be absurd. He is an enemy quite beyond the powers of all the dwarves put together, if they could all be collected again from the four corners of the world. The one thing your father wished was for his son to read the map and use the key. The dragon and the mountain are more than big enough tasks for you. Here, here, said Bilbo, and accidentally said it aloud. Hear what? They all said, turning suddenly towards him, and he was so flustered that he answered, Hear what I've got to say. What's that? They asked. Well, I should say that you ought to go east and have a look around. After all, there's the side door, and dragons must sleep sometimes, I suppose. If you sit on the doorstep long enough, I dare say you'll think of something. And, well, don't you know, I think we've talked long enough for one night, if you see what I mean. What about bed, and an early start, and all that? I'll give you a good breakfast before you go. Before we go, I suppose, Swoon, said Thorin. Aren't you the burglar? And isn't sitting on the doorstep your job, not to speak of getting inside the door? But I agree about bed and breakfast. I like eggs with my ham when starting on a journey. Fried, not poached, and mind you don't break 'em. After all the others had ordered their breakfasts, without so much as a please, which annoyed Bilbo very much, they all got up. The Hobbit had to find room for them all, and filled all his spare rooms and made beds on chairs and sofas before he got them all stowed and went to his own little bed, very tired and not altogether happy. One thing he did make his mind up about was not to bother to get up very early and cook everyone else's wretched breakfast. The tookishness was wearing off, and he was not now quite so sure that he was going on any journey in the morning. As he lay in bed, he could hear Thorin still humming to himself in the best bedroom next to him. Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day to find our long-forgotten gold. Bilbo went to sleep with that in his ears, and it gave him very uncomfortable dreams. It was long after the break of day when he woke up. Chapter 2. Roast Mutton. Up jumped Bilbo, and putting on his dressing gown, went into the dining room. There he saw nobody, but all the signs of a large and hurried breakfast. There was a fearful mess in the room, and piles of unwashed crocks in the kitchen. Nearly every pot and pan he possessed seemed to have been used. The washing up was so dismally real that Bilbo was forced to believe the party of the night before had not been part of his bad dreams, as he had rather hoped. Indeed, he was really relieved after all to think that they had all gone without him, and without bothering to wake him up. But with never a thank you, he thought. And yet, in a way, he couldn't help feeling just a trifle disappointed. The feeling surprised him. Don't be a fool, Bilbo Baggins, he said to himself, thinking of dragons and all that outlandish nonsense at your age. So he put on an apron, lit fires, boiled water, and washed up.
Then he had a nice little breakfast in the kitchen before turning out the dining room. By that time the sun was shining, and the front door was open, letting in a warm spring breeze. Bilbo began to whistle loudly and to forget about the night before. In fact, he was just sitting down to a nice little second breakfast in the dining room by the open window, when in walked Gandalf. "My dear fellow," he said, "whenever are you going to come? What about an early start? And here you are having breakfast, or whatever you call it, at 10:30. They left you the message because they couldn't wait." "What message?" said poor Mr. Baggins, all in a fluster. "Great elephants," said Gandalf. "You're not at all yourself this morning. You've never dusted the mantelpiece." "What's that got to do with it? I've had enough to do with washing up for 14. "If you'd dusted the mantelpiece, you'd have found this just under the clock," said Gandalf, handing Bilbo a note, written, of course, on his own notepaper. This is what he read. "Thorin and Company to burglar Bilbo greeting. For your hospitality, our sincerest thanks, and for your offer of professional assistance, our grateful acceptance. Terms, cash on delivery, up to and not exceeding 1/14 of total profits, if any. All travelling expenses guaranteed in any event. Funeral expenses to be defrayed by us or our representatives if occasion arises and the matter is not otherwise arranged for. Thinking it unnecessary to disturb your esteemed repose, we've proceeded in advance to make requisite preparations, and shall await your respected person at the Green Dragon Inn, Bywater, at 11 a.m. sharp. Trusting that you will be punctual, we have the honour to remain, yours deeply, Thorin and Company."
Hello,
"That
Delta.
leaves you just 10 minutes. You'll have to run," said Gandalf. "But," said Bilbo, "no time for it."
Yeah, work has been fine today. So finally Friday tomorrow, so that's gonna be nice. We're really tired this week. So much to do. And my wife wants me to paint more when I get home, so I should. After dinner, that's for sure. I need some more energy before I do anything. And after that, hopefully I can try out the game Scum, since they finally released version 1.0, or they finished early access. So yeah, it's not too much. It's only like a small triangle and one piece of the house, so it's not too much. I spent last Saturday painting the whole day, so that was really tiresome. Yeah, I see they upped the price as well, so it's like I guess 500 kroners, which I guess $48 or something. So they upped the price quite a lot,
said the wizard. "But," said Bilbo again, "no time for that either. Off you go." To the end of his days, Bilbo could never remember how he found himself outside, without a hat, walking stick, or any money, or anything that he usually took when he went out, leaving his second breakfast half finished and quite unwashed up, pushing his keys into Gandalf's hands and running as fast as his furry feet could carry him across the lane.
Yeah,
past the Great Mill, across the...
Have a nice day at work. See you maybe in the weekend. I haven't tried the new update for War Thunder, but I saw they added quite a lot of new premium vehicles. And the sale is coming up as well. Rip my wallet. I'm getting a payment or paycheck on the first. So maybe I will get something. That camouflage Sherman tank looked cool though. Yeah, have a nice day at work. I'm going to relax being done working for now.
Water, and then on for a whole mile or more. Very puffed he was when he got to Bywater, just on the stroke of 11, and found he had come without a pocket handkerchief. "Bravo!" said Balin, who was standing at the inn door looking out for him. Just then all the others came round the corner of the road from the village. They were on ponies, and each pony was slung about with all kinds of baggages, packages, parcels and paraphernalia. There was a very small pony, apparently for Bilbo.
"Up you two get, and off we go,"
said Thorin. "I'm awfully sorry," said Bilbo, "but I've come without my hat, and I've left my pocket handkerchief behind, and I haven't got any money. I didn't get your note until after 10:45 to be precise."
"Don't be precise,"
said Dwalin.
"And don't worry. You'll have to manage without pocket handkerchiefs and a good many other things before you get to the journey's end. As for a hat, I've got a spare hood and cloak in my luggage."
That's how they all came to start, jogging off from the inn one fine morning just before May, on laden ponies, and Bilbo was wearing a dark green hood, a little weather-stained, and a dark green cloak borrowed from Dwalin. They were too large for him, and he looked rather comic. What his father, Bungo, would have thought of him, I daren't think. His only comfort was he couldn't be mistaken for a dwarf, as he'd no beard. They had not been riding very long when up came Gandalf, very splendid, on a white horse. He had brought a lot of pocket handkerchiefs and Bilbo's pipe and tobacco. So after that the party went along very merrily, and they told stories or sang songs as they rode forward all day, except of course when they stopped for meals. These didn't come quite as often as Bilbo would have liked them, but still he began to feel that adventures were not so bad after all. At first they had passed through Hobbitlands, a wild, respectable country inhabited by decent folk, with good roads, an inn or two, and now and then a dwarf or a farmer ambling by on business. Then they came to lands where people spoke strangely, and sang songs Bilbo had never heard before. Now they had gone on far into the lowlands, where there were no people left, no inns, and the roads grew steadily worse. Not far ahead were dreary hills, rising higher and higher, dark with trees. On some of them were old castles with an evil look, as if they had been built by wicked people. Everything seemed gloomy, for the weather that day had taken a nasty turn. Mostly it had been as good as May can be, even in merry tales, but now it was cold and wet. In the lowlands, they had to camp when they could, but at least it had been dry. "To think it will soon be June," grumbled Bilbo as he splashed along behind the others in a very muddy track. It was after tea time. It was pouring with rain, and had been all day. His hood was dripping into his eyes, his cloak was full of water, the pony was tired and stumbled on stones, the others were too grumpy to talk. And I'm sure the rain has got into the dry clothes and into the food bags, thought Bilbo. Bother burgling and everything to do with it. I wish I was at home in my nice hole by the fire with the kettle just beginning to sing. It was not the last time that he wished that. Still the dwarves jogged on, never turning round or taking any notice of the hobbit. Somewhere behind the grey clouds the sun must have gone down, for it began to get dark. Wind got up, and the willows along the riverbank bent and sighed. I don't know what river it was, a rushing red one, swollen with the rains of the last few days that came down from the hills and mountains in front of them. Soon it was nearly dark. The winds broke up the grey clouds, and a waning moon appeared above the hills between the flying rags. Then they stopped, and Thorin muttered something about supper. "And where shall we get a dry patch to sleep on?" Not until then did they notice that Gandalf was missing. So far he'd come all the way with them, never saying if he was in the adventure or merely keeping them company for a while. He had eaten most, talked most, and laughed most, but now he simply was not there at all.
Just when a wizard would have been most useful, too,
groaned Dori and Nori, who shared the hobbit's views about regular meals, plenty and often. They decided in the end that they would have to camp where they were. So far they had not camped before on this journey, and though they knew that they soon would have to camp regularly, when they were among the misty mountains and far from the lands of respectable people, it seemed a bad, wet evening to begin on. They moved to a clump of trees, and though it was drier under them, the wind shook the rain off the leaves, and the drip, drip was most annoying. Also, the mischief seemed to have got into the fire. Dwarves can make a fire almost anywhere out of almost anything, wind or no wind. But they could not do it that night, not even Oin and Gloin, who were specially good at it. Then one of the ponies took fright at nothing and bolted. He got into the river before they could catch him, and before they could get him out again, Feely and Keely were nearly drowned, and all the baggage that he carried was washed away off him. Of course it was mostly food, and there was mighty little left for supper and less for breakfast. There they all sat glum and wet and muttering, while Oin and Gloin went on trying to light the fire, and quarrelling about it. Bilbo was sadly reflecting that adventures are not all pony rides in May sunshine, when Balin, who was always their lookout man, said, "There's a light over there." There was a hill some way off with trees on it, pretty thick in parts. Out of the dark mass of the trees they could now see a light shining, a reddish, comfortable-looking light, as if it might be a fire or torches twinkling. When they had looked at it for some time, they fell to arguing. Some said no, and some said yes. Some said they could but go and see, and anything was better than little supper, less breakfast, and wet clothes all the night. Others said, "These parts are none too well known, and are too near the mountains. Travellers seldom come this way now. The old maps are no use. Things have changed for the worse, and the road is unguarded. They have seldom ever heard of the king around here, and the less inquisitive you are as you go along, the less trouble you're likely to find." Some said, "After all, there are 14 of us." Others said, "Where's Gandalf got to?" This remark was repeated by everybody. Then the rain began to pour down worse than ever, and Oin and Gloin began to fight. That settled it. "After all, we have got a burglar with us," they said, and so they made off, leading their ponies, with all due and proper caution, in the direction of the light. They came to the hill and were soon in the wood. Up the hill they went, but there was no proper path to be seen, such as might lead to a house or a farm, and do what they could, they made a deal of rustling and crackling and creaking, and a good deal of grumbling and dratting, as they went through the trees in the pitch dark. Suddenly the red light shone out very bright through the tree trunks not far ahead.
Now it is the burglar's turn,
they said, meaning Bilbo.
You must go on and find out all about the light, and what it's for, and if all is perfectly safe and canny,
said Thorin to the hobbit.
Now scuttle off, and come back quick if all is well. If not, come back if you can. If you can't, hoot twice like a barn owl and once like a screech owl, and we'll do what we can.
Off Bilbo had to go, before he could explain that he could not hoot even once like any kind of owl any more than fly like a bat. But at any rate, hobbits can move quietly in woods, absolutely quietly. They take a pride in it, and Bilbo had sniffed more than once at what he called all this dwarvish racket as they went along, though I don't suppose you or I would notice anything at all on a windy night, not if the whole cavalcade had passed 2 feet off. As for Bilbo walking primly towards the red light, I don't suppose even a weasel would have stirred a whisker at it. So, naturally, he got right up to the fire, for fire it was, without disturbing anyone. And this is what he saw. 3 very large persons sitting round a very large fire of beech logs. They were toasting mutton on long spits of wood, and licking the gravy off their fingers. There was a fine, toothsome smell. Also, there was a barrel of good drink at hand, and they were drinking out of jugs. But they were trolls. Obviously trolls. Even Bilbo, in spite of his sheltered life, could see that. From the great, heavy faces of them, and their size, and the shape of their legs, not to mention their language, which was not drawing-room fashion at all.
Mutton yesterday, mutton today, and blimey, if it don't look like mutton again tomorrow, said one of the trolls.
Never a blinking bit of man flesh if we had for long enough,
said a second.
What the hell William was a-thinking of to bring us into these parts at all beats me, and the drink running short once more,
he said, jogging the elbow of William, who was taking a pull at his jug. William choked.
Shut your mouth,
he said as soon as he could.
You can't expect folk to stop here forever just to be hit by you and Bert. You've hit a village and a half between you since we come down from the mountains. How much more do you want? And time's been up our way when you'd have said, thank you, Bill, for a nice bit of fat valley mutton like what this is.
He took a big bite off a sheep's leg he was toasting and wiped his lips on his sleeve. Yes, I am afraid trolls do behave like that, even those with only 1 head each. After hearing all this, Bilbo ought to have done something at once. Either he should have gone back quietly and warned his friends that there were 3 fair-sized trolls at hand in a nasty mood, quite likely to try and toast a dwarf, or even
Well, I'm almost home. I will turn off the stream soon, so I will see you guys later. Hopefully I'm not too tired to play computer tonight. Yesterday I went on quite late, but and I was really tired, so I only got like 2 matches in War Thunder. So yeah, but tomorrow, definitely on Friday, I'm going straight home from work and not doing anything. Unless I had to pick up the kids, I don't remember. I won't see. So yeah, See you guys later.